Senator from Alaska.
Mr. President, I want to begin by offering my sincere thanks to the chairman of the Finance Committee, my friend Senator Wyden of Oregon. I'm honored to be on the floor with him today to talk about these housing issues and this really important bill, the Workforce Housing Tax Credit Act, as he already mentioned, bipartisan and bicameral. Now, as Senator Wyden already mentioned, our country's facing a lot of challenges right now. Inflation, fentanyl coming through our borders, national security threats all over the place overseas. But it's very obvious, anyone reading the paper knows that we're also experiencing in rural and urban America a severe housing crisis. Everywhere I travel in the great state of Alaska, I hear from Alaskans reeling from the scarcity of housing, and it is everywhere. Anchorage, Fairbanks, Sitka, Ketchikan, Kodiak, every single small rural village in my state is everywhere, Mr. President, and I know it's a big challenge in Oregon, but it's a big challenge all over the country. And it's a challenge that impacts low and middle income families, and it stands as a stark obstacle to getting and keeping jobs, to having a family, to building communities. This is really foundational stuff in terms of what matters in communities, housing. So solving this challenge has been one of my top priorities, and I really want to thank Senator Wyden and his team on being so patient and working with us. A real good partner here. This is going to take all kinds of solutions. There's no silver bullet here. It's going to take everybody pulling on the same oar, the Fed, state, private sector, tribes, nonprofits. But this is an important start. And Mr. President, I actually hosted the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge, in Alaska this past August. We held a roundtable and some meetings on urban housing issues, on rural housing issues. It was very well attended. I want to thank all the Alaskans who took part. They weren't shy with Secretary Fudge. She got an earful. And there's a whole host of things we're going to follow up on with her. Challenges dealing with overregulation from HUD, homelessness definitions, housing formulas for cities, but it was progress getting her up to Alaska. And so this is progress, Mr. President. This is progress. What Senator Wyden and I have introduced is an exciting and creative bill that will broaden a tried and true federal tax incentive program, the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit. This all started during the 1980s, during the Reagan administration. It's market-based, it's private sector focused, it's a proven, successful formula that will help catalyze the private sector to build more housing in urban and rural areas for working families. That's why we actually named it the Workforce Housing Tax Credit Act. Teachers, law enforcement, first responders, nurses, healthcare officials, electricians, the backbone of so many communities are right now priced out of the market to buy a home. Expanding the low-income housing credit will help address the core issues of not just homelessness and overcrowding in many places in Alaska, particularly rural Alaska, but it will empower hardworking Alaskans to stay in our communities and build a more robust workforce. Now, Mr. President, sometimes when you bring legislation down on the Senate floor, you're not sure who's going to support it. Well, I am very proud to say that back home in Alaska, this bill has enormous support. Liberals, conservatives, mayors, our governor, the mayor of Anchorage, our biggest city, the chair of the Anchorage Assembly. And I know these guys really well. They don't actually get along on much, but they support this bill, we have tribal groups, we have private sector groups, we have home builder groups. It is a super big list. And I think that's a signal for Senator Wyden and I that we're on to something here. We're on to something here. If there aren't homes and communities for hardworking families, then entire communities are shut off for growth. Housing is a catalyst for community and economic development and good jobs and pride in where you live. This bill offers one solution that will actually lead to construction of these kind of housing developments. How do I know that? How can I say that? Because as the chairman of the Finance Committee already said, we know this works. The low-income tax credit already works. We know that. And we're building on that program in the best way to ensure that the private sector will actually use this program to break open other bottlenecks for economic development. So, importantly, Mr. President, this bill provides flexibilities to states and developers to decide what's best for their communities, not a one-size-fits-all Washington mandate. We don't like those in Alaska. So, as I mentioned, it has broad support, bipartisan, bicameral, and once again, to my friend from Oregon, I really want to thank Senator Wyden. He was very patient with me and my team. We had a number of edits, so we were trying to make sure this would work for America and Alaska. Sometimes my state has some real unique challenges, and he accommodated so much, was very patient with us. And then you can tell again from the reaction of this broad-based group of stakeholders back home in my state, this has a lot of support. So thank you, Senator Wyden, again. Look forward to working with you and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, getting this over the goal line and addressing one of the big challenges in America that I think impacts every state in the country. And this is a way, one of the many tools we will use to help address it. I yield the floor.
Mr.